Frig Off was filmed before a live studio audience. Welcome back to Frig Off, the only show brave enough to say what your uncle yells during family dinners before being asked to leave. I swear to Terry Fox's ghost, this country's turned into a damn fever dream run by a goose on meth and some ginger named Colin who smells of pee. Like the other day I go to the pub to down a 2-4 and some indigenous chick asks me what's my favorite color, so I reply my favorite color is your big fat tits, and next thing you know I have to apologize to her. This ain't the Canada I grew up in. Back then, the only thing you feared was your dad's belt, nuclear war, or being turned gay. One pink polo and your dad's watching you like you're gonna install a disco ball and make the dog your emotional support twink. Parents weren't scared about a priest molesting their kid. They were scared it turned him fabulous. Trauma? No way. The real tragedy was jazz hands. But now on to tonight's topic, immigration. Or as I like to call it, why is there a new shawarma place in town and why does it taste like yummy but smells like crotch? Look, I ain't racist. I said thank you to a guy from Syria once and I meant it. But all I'm saying is, how come I can't get a doctor's appointment for 6 months, but my buddy Ahmed opened a restaurant, a mechanic shop, and a kickboxing gym in the time it took me to renew my fishing license? My cousin Reg says it's cultural invasion. I said, buddy, you live in a camper behind a Max Milk. The only thing invading you is gout and bad decisions. Reg's idea of culture is saying things like me likey and quoting Borat. And let me tell you, immigrants, they work, like actual honest work. I saw a guy from Bangladesh shoveling snow with a baking pan and smiling. Meanwhile, my nephew Kyle Jr. won't get off the couch unless the government deposits a Red Bull directly into his veins. And what do? We complain. Oh, they're taking our jobs. Buddy, what job? No one's taking your spot at Canadian Tire yelling at teenagers about spark plugs. You think some guy with a PhD from Tehran came here just to steal your minimum wage gig at a Timmy's drive-thru? He's not here to take your job. He's here to save your dumb ass for when you mix up Gorilla Glue and margarine again. And people keep saying they don't integrate. Yeah, they don't integrate? You ever try to get accepted by a small-town Canadian Legion? I've been a white man named Kyle my whole life, and I still need 2 references and a blood sacrifice just to get them to sell me a Molson X. Meanwhile, the new Somali grocery store down the block welcomed me in, gave me goat curry, and complimented the rips in my jeans, and that was just in the bathroom. And let's talk food, bud. Immigrants brought flavor to this country. Before them, our spiciest dish was white bread slightly toasted near paprika. Now I eat things with names I can't pronounce and sweat out racism one delicious bite at a time. Truth is, immigrants are the only reason this country still functions. They're the doctors, the engineers, the truck drivers, the Uber drivers, the chefs, the only people who still show up to work without needing 3 mental health days because mercury's in Gatorade or whatever. So if you're mad about immigration, don't yell at the new guy running the shawarma shop. Yell at yourself for not learning how to use Google Maps or cook rice. Immigrants are not the problem. You just peaked in grade 10. And now it's time for Going Coastal. Meanwhile, in BC, you ask for a coffee and they give you a mushroom tea and a tax form for your aura. I toured a 1-bedroom in Vancouver that was just a slightly damp sleeping bag stapled to a fence. The realtor called it cozy and asked for $3,400 plus my Aunt Bev's recipe for Nanaimo bars. Albertans think culture is defined by oil sands, pickup trucks, and matching plaid beer koozies. Alberta, where the oil runs thick, the trucks run loud, and the political views run somewhere between cowboy libertarian and Facebook uncle with a gun rack. The second Alberta gets a surplus, it cuts healthcare and blames a rainbow crosswalk for the economy collapsing again. And you know what's bad when Saskatchewan's entire economy is dependent on one guy selling gas station pecker pills out of a friggin' K-car with wood paneling on the sides like some kind of hillbilly racing stripes. Oh well, at least they have the Rough Riders and the hope of a better life. Manitoba is what happens when Saskatchewan and Ontario have a one-night stand and agree to never talk about it again. That place is flatter than a plate of piss. The only hobby you can have there is waiting for your baby to tell you what gender they are. And don't even get me started in Ontario. Ever been to Toronto? It's like someone fed Manhattan nothing but quinoa and self-loathing. One time I was there and I asked a fella for directions and he tried to sell me a no-bedroom condo for 3.2 million Canadian dollars. Hey, you know why Quebecers hate mirrors? Because every time they look in one, they see a Canadian. You haven't experienced Quebec until you've been glared at in a coochie-tard dépanneur for asking a question in English, and then watch the same guy post in English on Facebook an hour later. Then there's New Brunswick. New Brunswick is like Canada's appendix. No one's quite sure what it does, but it occasionally flares up and ruins everyone's day. If New Brunswick were a TV show, it'd be the pilot episode of something the CBC cancelled halfway through filming. Nova Scotia is stuck in a time warp where every gas station sells beef jerky, postcards of lighthouses, and CDs from some cousin's fiddle band. Halifax is the only city where a historic explosion is still the most exciting thing that ever happened. And PEI, Buddy, PEI is just a sandbar with a baker's dozen trees and seafood. One time I sneezed and met the entire population in one afternoon. And Islanders get offended if you call it small, but they still give directions like turn left where Dave used to live before the fire. Then there's Newfoundland. The accents are so thick, you need a translator just to understand the bartender, and by the time you do, you've agreed to marry their cousin Daryl, who's a scaffolder. And the main industry there is guilt-tripping your kids into moving back home. Anyway, that was Going Coastal. I gotta get going. My new neighbor from Nepal just invited me over for dumplings and prayer, and I'm not missing out again. This country's right cooked, bud, and if you don't believe me, then I got 2 words for you. Frig right off.